Today, in politics, immigration is a hot-button issue that divides the country. Conservative groups have come out in droves to oppose immigration reform. They may be vocal, but these groups still represent a minority of the population. But what if I told you, less than 100 years ago, a conservative hate group's stance on immigration embodied the opinions of most Americans? In the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan emerged as a powerful political and cultural force. In Indiana, the group's anti-immigrant rhetoric was extremely popular, thanks in large part to its charismatic leader and his ability to suppress negative press. And perhaps it could have remained influential if that same leader had not been charged with second-degree murder and rape. More on the trial later, but first it is important to understand why and how the KKK used traditionalism as a way to fight off encroaching modernity. Based on my research, Americans had been shocked by the impressive damages and horrors that modern technology had caused during World War I. At the same time, thanks to the successes of the Industrial Revolution, urban areas sprung up across the countryside. Because of the new low-skilled jobs that came with it, immigrants from across Europe moved into previously white Anglo-Saxon communities. Rural Americans feared the impact that urbanization and industrialization would have on their lives. The country was on the verge of a culture war. For small-town Americans, the Klan represented traditionalism. My research shows that the Klan of the 1920s was a predominantly rural group who saw their livelihoods being taken away from them by immigrants. Clearly, the KKK wanted to fight modernity by protecting traditionalism, but what's shocking is how successful they became. Not only did the group grow to its largest size in the 1920s, but their ideas on immigration actually influenced national legislation. From 1921 until 1924, Congress passed a series of anti-immigration legislation culminating with the Johnson-Reed Act. Klan historian David Chalmers asserts that no one represented the dominant American attitudes on immigration more than the Klan. Research shows that the KKK was an influential and national organization, but what surprised me was the fact that it was not strongest in the South, but rather in Indiana. Why would a northern state gravitate towards a hate group? One of the major reasons for the Klan's growth in Indiana was the Klan's larger-than-life leader there, D.C. Stevenson. Stevenson was an excellent speaker, a likable figure, and most importantly, he was able to mobilize his rural supporters across the state. According to historian Bradford Charlotte, Stevenson successfully turned the Indiana Klan into a political machine with which he could wield monolithic Klan vote. He was able to use his power and influence to insert politicians loyal to the KKK at the state, local, and national level. Stevenson also benefited from virtually no criticism in the press. As I looked at newspaper articles from the early 1920s, I saw that Klan activities were often given the benefit of the doubt. Many articles and editorials portrayed the group as protectors of white society, as well as law and order. More importantly, papers used KKK members as their source, which usually exaggerated and distorted reality, and reported them as fact. This was due to the fact that publishers were threatened with boycotts and Klan violence if they published negative stories. For most publishers, it was easier to accept the bribes and leave the Klan alone. However, this all changed after their charismatic leaders fall from grace. In the spring of 1925, D.C. Stevenson was charged with the murder of not an African American, a Jew, or a Catholic, or even an immigrant, but a white Protestant woman named Madge Oberholzer. While working for the state, she was kidnapped on a train and raped by Stevenson. Before she succumbed to a mixture of a staph infection, which she got from a bite from Stevenson, and mercury chloride that Stevenson had given her to commit suicide, Oberholzer was able to testify to the police against the leader of the KKK. Stevenson was eventually convicted, and the papers across Indiana and nationally turned on the Klan. Furthermore, Stevenson himself gave the press names of politicians who had accepted the KKK's bribes, which only hurt their image more. Just as quickly as they had arrived on the political scene and captured the national sentiment on immigration, the Klan had disappeared back into the fringe of politics. D.C. Stevenson's organization claimed to have high moral standards, but his own actions contradicted the group's ideals. In the end, the 1920s Klan had popular ideas, but fell out of favor because of scandal and corruption.